My thoughts on Metal Gear Solid Delta were optimistic ones, as the tech demo that showcased the game showed they really put in a lot of emphasis on the details that MGS3 already had, but turned them up to like 15. Now we got another look at the game and actual moments that if you've played the game, you're already more than familiar with. And I gotta say, Metal Gear Solid Delta looks fresh to me. It's still the same story, the same scenes, all recreated shot for shot, but it's not a carbon copy of how these scenes were designed. It's clearly different, but in a familiar and good way. The slight changes while keeping the essence of what these scenes meant to show made me feel like I was when I experienced these scenes for the first time.
Yet it remains completely faithful, shot for shot, and with nearly all of the original voice acting. Even for longtime fans, watching these updated scenes is like experiencing them for the first time.
Yeah, okay, way to take the words right out of my mouth, David. Maybe it's nostalgia. I don't know. I've replayed MGS3 more times than I can count. Hell, I could probably recite the entire script from memory at this point. Listen, I've loved and mourned this series many times over at this point. MGS3 being turned into a pachinko machine practically killed my hope for the franchise. This has always been the last hope Konami has at convincing me that they have the right people in charge of keeping the franchise going. And seeing the intent behind why they're doing this, which is trying to reintroduce MGS to modern audiences, I'm willing to give them a shot. They already had me interested with the tech demo they showed, so let's see what Delta is all about. So far we've gotten an actual gameplay trailer, the showcase with David Hayter giving us more information, and the podcast that gave us a bit more from the producer. There's a few important bits from all of these sources, so I'll be going back and forth between everything as needed. Konami also updated the main website, which details a lot of what the remake is all about. The core experience of the original, evolved and more immersive than ever. The same gripping story and engrossing world, but with all new graphics and 3D audio that enhanced the jungle atmosphere. This is incredibly apparent when looking at this game that they really are focusing on the details of what made MGS3 so unique for its time. The jungle, the animals, Snake taking damage, all of this looks like it was dialed up significantly. Even just Snake himself, how much detail they're pushing out of him. From his skin to his uniform, even how face paint just sits on his face. It's like how I imagined this game looked like in my own head. The first impression I got from looking at the trailer was just wow. Even looking at side-by-sides to the original, I'm just blown away by how good these characters look and how nice these scenes are recreated. The elephant in the room is the lack of the color filter that the game is known for. But the scenes still get across what they need to, and it's something that I don't think it's that big of a loss. But I feel this is a good middle ground because the story and the voice acting are all unchanged. It'll literally be the same story shot for shot, just enhanced visually. And while that means the lighting and color may be slightly different between versions, I don't think that alone excludes it from being a faithful recreation of the game. Remember, it's all about capturing what the essence of the game was, how certain scenes were supposed to make you feel, and how you can still get that across even with different lighting and post-processing and enhanced audio. And as far as what I've seen, I think they nailed it. A lot of the ideas this game presented have a chance to be reimagined with the current technology. Because if we're going to remake MGS3, then you may as well do what it did for its time, which was push the limits of graphics at the time, but do it with the current technology that we have now, and they seem to be doing just that. Also, in the MGS Delta deep dive, the producer did confirm that the legacy option in Delta will add a color filter and change the controls to be more closer to the original game. This is great for those that still want to play MGS3 basically as unchanged as possible, but still have the graphical improvements that the game is doing, though we will still need to see just how much this legacy control scheme ends up playing like. We only have one clip so far to look at, and it seems like even the animations more closely resemble how the original was. It will probably still feel different to play over the original, but the fact that they want to do these additions really screams to me that they want to get this game right for as many people as possible. People that want a completely new revamped control scheme, and ones that want it as identical to the original in pretty much every way, outdated controls and all. They also confirmed on that same podcast that the audio was able to be used without compression this time around, as that was a limitation for old releases of Snake Eater. So while we are getting the original voiceover for this game, we should be technically hearing them better than ever before. They also confirmed that certain voice actors that provided information on your controls were brought back to re-record those lines specifically. I'm slightly nervous about this one, cause the 3DS version of Snake Eater did the same thing, and those lines really stuck out, and the characters didn't really sound the same. It was really noticeable. I don't want to say it felt phoned in, but judge for yourself.
Okay, Snake. Just relax and it'll all be over before you know it. Stay with me. I've seen people in worse shape before. Think you can handle it? Okay, here we go. First, open the survival viewer with the start button. If you select Cure, you can start the treatment. Healing is divided into treatment using medicine and surgical treatment.
There could be a lot of reasons why this sounds this way, and let's not forget the obvious one, it's on a 3DS. So hopefully this kind of phenomenon doesn't happen with Delta. The game looks insane in a lot of ways, but the characters' faces got my attention in various ways. It seems that a lot of liberties were taken in the portrayal of characters. Paramedic has a distinct look compared to the original now, as does the boss, which I'm on the fence on because I don't think they look bad, but they also feel like they could look more like the actual character a bit more. This mainly goes to the boss because I feel like they could use the shading around her cheeks that really helped define her face a bit more. Her face being slightly different is nothing new. Snake's face looks very different to the original, for example, but he does look more in line with the portrayals of Big Boss we've gotten to see since Snake Eater, so I think it's fine. I will say Snake does look older than he should when you get really close up. He should be in his 30s around this time, yet his eyes give you that look that he's much older. The rest of his face is fine though, and depending on the lighting, these details aren't that noticeable anymore, and he looks younger again. It's honestly just this shot in particular that gives that impression to me. I will say, when it comes to the boss, I do get what they seem to be going for here. She does have that look of her of a veteran that's been through a lot of traumatic things in their life, and you can see the emptiness in their gaze as they look over to Snake in the shot. It's all coming across just the same way as it did for me in the original. But yet, it just doesn't look like the character as closely as it did in other interpretations. I need to see more of the boss to really be sure though. Maybe it'll grow on me the more I see her. I don't think she looks bad, it's just that she definitely looks different compared to other versions of her that we've seen throughout the years. Personally, I don't think realism takes away from Metal Gear style. It's always been a series that strives for as much realism as it can possibly get away with, while also having straight up goofy or anime-like moments that we've come to know and love. The game being realistic is one thing, but it still has that Metal Gear charm to it, with the character designs and the cinematography, not to mention it just all looks beautiful to look at. You can have a realistic looking game and have it still be bland. I don't really get that here, but I guess some people might not agree with that if you keep actively comparing it to the original. I don't think this is trying to replace the original, but more so just bring it forward to new audiences and reinterpreting and modernizing things for the sake of improving the game, and that's pretty much it. Adding stuff like Legacy Mode I feel is a nice middle ground to hit that keeps the version of that game alive in the remake for those that just want that instead. The actual trailer, once it gets to gameplay, shows they're really trying to keep the original experience intact with all the things you were able to do, plus some new additions. Stalking appears to still be possible here, where you'd use the D-pad to make Snake walk super quietly to sneak up on people. I still really like the changes made to these kinds of animations in particular. How he approaches with the knife forward feels very in character for Snake here. The combat roll is here instead of diving like how it is in MGS5. You can even dive into prone still. The leaves sticking to Snake was a detail we saw in the first ever engine trailer we got, so it's nice to see that in action here. You can see all the leaves and dirt kick up into the air as Snake does that combat roll. We get to see Snake hanging off a bridge here, and two things stuck out to me. The animation has Snake grab the planks that he is able to reach out to. You see him start by reaching over to grab the next plank in a wide reach, and then only move slightly for the next one, to then go and reach out again much farther for the other ones. I'm not sure if the animation is made to work with this specifically, or they just lined it up to look that way for the trailer. You can see the same hanging animation in the engine showcase, and it doesn't seem to do what it does on the bridge, so I'm leaning toward this actually being intentional. I gotta say, this animation did look weird to me at first, but knowing this detail makes this animation appear a lot better than I initially perceived it as. The rest of it though does still look a little weird to me, as I've known this bridge so long as the wobbly thing that it is, but here there's not a lot of give when Snake hangs off of it. They literally show a comparison in the same showcase video and it's clear as day. Yeah, that's definitely wobbly. My guess is since the physics were done in Unreal, the entire way the bridge works is now actually more stable than it was back on the PS2. How the bridge functions with all of its support shut off though, will have to be something we discover for ourselves. Next we see Snake in the river, with the crocodile cap, the water rippling across as Snake traverses and avoids the guard on the flying platform, and the way the light ends up reflecting in the water and can even let you see Snake's gear refracting and warping around makes my artistic brain just scream with joy. I just love this kind of stuff. The fact that they're showing the croc cap's intended use here is also very nice. The cap itself is a very iconic part of Metal Gear history. Hell, it was featured in MGO2 as well. If you thought I wouldn't mention MGO here, then you don't know what I'm about yet. When hunting for food, we get to see the leaves sticking to Snake again, and we also get to see the bandana and just how good the physics are with it. This is practically the best we've ever seen the bandana look in any form of media. I think like Fortnite was probably the only other time that I've seen Snake's bandana look this good. Fast forward to the cave and we can see here how they're doing things like God rays and fire on the torch. The only thing I can say about this shot is if the fire looks like this on the torch, just imagine how the Fury fight is gonna look. Just food for thought. Now we do get to see something new here with Snake being caked in mud and crawling away from a soldier. You even get to see the trail he leaves behind as he crawls away. Not sure how he couldn't get spotted here, but that's just me. Alright, so I'm not just reciting what happens in the trailer. This is a good spot to mention that the MGS5-esque elements are definitely still here in full force. We saw them in the engine trailer. Some of the animations and mechanics seem to be taken straight from MGS5. This isn't a bad thing by any means, but I do wish that there was something more to differentiate them as they did with a lot of other animations, like Snake when he's walking around with the Mark 22 Hush Puppy out. That is a completely new animation for this game, and it makes it really feel unique. It's so weird seeing these new animations and then having them mixed with old ones from Phantom Pain. I get that if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but it's still a bit jarring to see for me. I'll admit maybe I'm being a bit picky here. I can tolerate all the ones I've shown, but the ones that I wish would be closer to the original is the running animation. It is straight up a reuse of MGS5's running animation, and I just don't like that. Snake in MGS3 ran like an action hero, and I thought it was great then. MGS4 used that same running animation for its early versions, and then they updated the animation a bit and lowered the arms to make it seem more like Snake wasn't able to move around like he used to. Which is a nice way of updating this kind of animation, but something about MGS5's movement here I just don't like in comparison. I don't see these things affecting my overall opinion of the game, but I don't want to sit here and pretend everything is perfect and that I don't see anything wrong with what I'm being shown. It's just that these are nitpicks and/or decisions I personally don't like. But the rest that gets shown are all very good things to see in my opinion. Balancing on beams, using CQC to slam and interrogate guards, even showing more in-game stuff like Snake with the Moss Camo and Mosin Nagant. I did notice the Snake gets to have large weapons on his back like it is in Phantom Pain, and they can shoot sniper rifles in over-the-shoulder view. Though seeing the weapons on Snake's back does make me curious how the backpack is going to work this time around. Will you be able to equip weapons the same way as you did in the original, or is it just like Phantom Pain where you can only have one weapon on your back and then one sidearm, etc.? I'm curious to see how this plays out and how that affects the overall game. The big detail that we can get from both the showcase and the website is that the damage system was upgraded significantly, to the point that the injuries you sustain throughout the game will stay visible. And it's not just injuries, but Snake's uniform will show wear and tear throughout the game. Which explains why in the showcase they were showing all these wounds showing up on Snake's model, and his uniform had wear and tear. I won't bring up every moment, but you can see various examples of damage shown on Snake throughout every trailer. In the engine reveal, you can see cuts on Snake's face as well as damage on his uniform. In this shot, you can see cuts and what looks to be a burn mark on Snake's back. In this shot with the M63, it's not just cuts, bruises, and bullet wounds, but you can see Snake's skin completely raw as well in certain sections, possibly from burns he's received or explosives he's gotten hit by. Even the shot with the Mosin has minimal damage, but you can see that there's actually a few cuts throughout his uniform here. So it seems that the detail in terms of damage is going to be down to the minute level of details here. Also, it's interesting that this damage also appears even in the Virtuous mission, which indicates to me that this damage is not just related to injuries, but it's actually any kind of damage that Snake gets hit by will leave permanent marks on his body as the game progresses, which is a kind of an interesting tidbit because you have to fight all the bosses. This has to be one of my favorite details about Delta so far. We may have seen details like what Delta is doing done by other games, including MGS3 itself, but they're really pushing the limits of the current level of graphical fidelity we can get out of Unreal Engine 5. Check these trailers out in 4K and just look at all the damage Snake gets throughout and how varied it is. I can't wait to push the limits on this and just see Snake with dozens of arrows stuck to his body. The CQC is important to note here because they really emphasize the intensity of how the strikes connect, while not making it seem like Snake is just a master of it like he is in later games. I also like that they're bringing back all the contextual throws that you can do, and that they don't immediately knock anyone out like they do in later games. That palm strike into interrogation is insane, man. I probably rewatched it dozens of times just editing this video. It looks so good. In addition, it's safe to say mechanics like reflex mode don't seem to be included here as Snake gets spotted without a slowdown occurring, staying true to their statement of keeping the game as close to how the original experience was, and only modernizing what was necessary like controls and movement. Here's hoping that they actually improve the AI to compensate for all these control changes. Seeing all this makes me excited, but also wanting to see more. Maybe Metal Gear Online? It's no question at this point my love for MGO, yet I don't mention it much at all when it comes to Delta. As far as I'm concerned, MGO2 is in good hands with Save MGO, and MGO, if done for Delta, has a lot to prove. This might be the only thing when it comes to Metal Gear that if not done absolutely perfectly, I won't be sold on. And if Konami ever needs a consultant on this, I think I'm more than qualified at this point to help out. Okay, I'm only joking. Kinda. But me and many other people have noticed a particular selection of music being used in the video with David Hayter.
But at the same time, enhance it for modern audiences. Not an easy job. So let's dive deeper, and what better place to start than the completely overhauled book.
Is this a hint at something more? I certainly hope so, as when it comes to official media as this, the music choice is certainly deliberate and reflective of the game being marketed. unless it's explicitly obvious, such as an announcement trailer where they use completely unrelated licensed music. A more official showcase such as this wouldn't just throw music around that didn't fit. The fact that they use MGO1 music here could be a nod, or it could be an oversight they didn't think people would care about. Either way, I'm paying attention, Konami. Show me what you got. To end things off, let's look at what producer Noriaki Okamura said about Delta in the showcase with David Hayter. Okamura-san, being part of the old guard, having worked at Konami for over 30 years and worked on titles such as Portable Ops and the digital graphic novels, and even things such as Policenauts being one of the first things he worked on, immediately got my attention. Like, okay, we got somebody with experience here, and we were able to find out a portion of the team is actually made up of staff that worked on the original games, though we weren't given an exact number. They did mention that many had indeed left though, and that's going to remain the case for these titles, possibly alluding that there won't be any collaboration with Konami and Kojima as far as currently announced game. That's really what I got out of that statement, because it was really weirdly worded. I don't know, you guys tell me what you think on that one. Remember, these were a lot of the same people that always pushed for Kojima to come back whenever he would leave the games up to his team to do, which the producer very much was a part of those teams, Portable Ops being the main one where this kind of phenomenon would happen. Kojima would leave things to his team and they would eventually keep asking him to come back and take on a more involved role. Now with Kojima gone, they're manning this project and are intending to try to capture as much of the original as possible while updating it for modern audiences. It's a refreshing take to get this directly from the producer of the game, and it makes me feel a bit more confident with the game. But he does go on to say that they decided to bring these titles back due to more people being less familiar with MGS. Sure, Revengeance has probably kept the series relevant due to its meme status, and Snake being in Fortnite might make younger players more aware of his existence, at the cost of being known as the guy in Fortnite that has a bandana, but Metal Gear is definitely the kind of series that I feel should be brought to more people. The messages of these games are worth passing on as much as possible. MGS3 might be the safest choice, but it also brings in the question on what loyalty truly means to an individual, and how far we are willing to let our loyalty, whether it be to country, people, or ourselves, dictate what roles we are willing to play on a given scene laid out in our lives. Seeing they consider it their responsibility to make sure that people get to enjoy the series due to them being entrusted with it is all good stuff to hear as far as whether it's in good hands. They will prove if they are worthy of that with Delta's release and how good it is. Seeing him be the one to say that is honestly a refreshing take to hear. And we know that's a sore spot for them because Okamura-san went on and mentioned the Master Collection and how it wasn't to people's expectations, and that they're still trying to make improvements to it. It's also nice to see that the idea for Delta was planted long before the Master Collection due to the licensing issue of historical footage that was happening all those years ago. The MGS remake rumors were certainly annoying to deal with back then, but it's nice to hear how that all went down in reality. And I hope they continue to improve on the Master Collection and continue to make them closer to their original releases as far as visual effects and audio go. Okamura-san ends this by saying he wants players to judge for themselves if the team is capable of keeping the franchise going, and that players need to keep them honest. I hope that this video got across my thoughts on the game as well as gave you insight into what the team is doing. I currently like what I'm seeing, but seeing and playing are two very different things, and so while I remain optimistic, I'll need to have the game in my hands to say for sure. I need to see what the team are going to do to handle things like the game's zones, the enemy AI, the individual animals and their uses. Hell, how is the codec and menu system going to be handled? And of course, I want to know about the future of things like MGO. I am interested in seeing how the team reinterpret these elements of the game. But until then, I hope you enjoyed this video. I tend not to like doing videos like these because I feel like I'm just regurgitating information a lot of the time. And unless I can provide something new with it, I tend not to want to do it. So hopefully I was able to achieve some of that this time around. We still don't have a release date on Delta, even though a bunch of sites seemingly announced them inadvertently, and then retracted it. So I guess the jury's still out on when Delta is supposed to release. When it does, you're going to get a complete breakdown from me. So I hope you guys look forward to that. Have a good one.